Hi. Why does this recession go on and on and on, possibly for the rest of the decade? We'll talk about that in just a minute. But later today, I'm going to be at dickmorris.com during the debate. The Republicans are having their first presidential debate from 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock tonight. Sorry, but it's on CNN. I know it's a bad habit, but try it once. And while you're watching the debate with one eye, go to dickmorris.com with the other. And every 60 seconds or so, I'm going to be posting a comment there about the debate that's going on. So you can get live in real time my reaction to what they're saying. So I hope you enjoy that. And then at tomorrow's lunch, we'll have a video where we'll talk about my feelings about the debate and after a night's reflection, who won, who lost, and what really went on. But today, let's talk about the issue of why this recession just keeps going on and on. We're accustomed to recessions as a result of the business cycle, which is a fairly predictable affair. People start making money and then they start taking crazy risks and crazier risks, and bubbles develop in real estate or in the internet or something like that, and then they break because the speculation becomes too great, like in real estate, home prices are too high, it comes crashing down, and then gradually it builds up and we get back to normal again. That's the normal process, and that usually takes a year or two, sometimes even 3, to work itself out. And we had that. That's what the real estate, the Fannie Mae, the Freddie Mac led to. That was that bubble. But that was the trigger for the beginning of a very different and much more dangerous cycle, which we're now in the middle of, which is a debt implosion cycle. And obviously human history is modern economics has not been around that long, but it appears to happen over a 50 and 60 year period. And what happens is that debt begins to accumulate. It piles up. And in this case, it started after World War II. And after 60 years, 66 years, the debt that the planet owes the planet has become gigantic. It's now $160 trillion that the human race owes to the human race. Now, by that, I don't include things like Social Security obligations or pension obligations for the future. I mean debt that's payable in annual debt service payments. A mortgage debt, corporate debt, individual debt, national debt, all of that put together comes to $160 trillion. And the world only is worth $60 trillion in its GDP. So the debt is just getting to a point where it's so huge and so unsupportable that the markets freeze up. They're not willing to lend more money. And even if they're willing, they sometimes just run out of capital. There just isn't enough. Now, the United States was relatively invulnerable to that process when Bill Clinton left office, because our debt had gone down to the range of about 6 or 7 trillion. And much of that was owed to the government itself by the government, so it's really just a theoretical accounting debt. Then Bush came into office and had a number of serious problems. He had to deal with 9/11, with Katrina, with the need for homeland security to protect us and go back into our dams and physical facilities and airports and air traffic system and make them less vulnerable, send troops to Afghanistan and perhaps more optionally into Iraq. And then the recession came, the boom and bust recession. And as a result of all of that, the national debt had gone up to $10 trillion. But that was still a fairly supportable amount. Then Obama came into office and immediately ran it up to 12, 13, and now $14 trillion. He borrowed a vast amount of money, which was largely unnecessary. It was his stimulus package, his effort to spend us out of this recession. Well, it didn't work with the recession, but it did make the United States incredibly vulnerable to this new global environment in which the credit market seize up. Because out of the $160 trillion that the world owes the world, 40 trillion of it is national debt owed by countries. And the United States is 15 trillion or 14 trillion of that 40 trillion. It's incredible. We're more than a third of that total global debt. So the problem is that the United States needs to borrow money that is increasingly simply not there. Now, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have dealt with this problem by taking advantage of the prerogative that the dollar is the global currency. And what they've been doing is just printing money, basically injecting it into the banking system with nothing backing it up and just going on the credibility of the U.S. government and the dollar. And as a result, 85% of the money we've borrowed in the last year has been money we've printed. We print the money, we give it to the banks, we borrow it from the banks, and we pay them a nominal interest rate of about 3.5%. But on June 30th, the Fed is going to stop printing money, and it has to. It's tripled the currency supply. The risks of inflation are just unbelievably high if it were to keep doing that. And then the United States has a serious problem of where does it find its capital? Where does it find its money? And if the United States government can't borrow money, how is a corporation to borrow money? Or how is an individual to borrow money, who are much riskier and don't have a taxing power to back them up? And that process of contraction, of people not lending money, of debt growing, and people being unable to pay it, and interest rates rising because everybody's trying to borrow money, and those interest rates in turn increase the indebtedness, that cycle is a terribly difficult one to exit. Japan has been locked in just such a situation for 20 years, from 1990 until 2010, and they still haven't gotten out of it. And the United States is now locked in that cycle because of the borrowing that Obama did. Now, if we're able to get rid of Obama, and I think we will, and get a new government in there, a new Republican administration, then I think that it's possible, by a combination of tax cuts and serious spending cuts, to stimulate economic growth enough so that we can actually go back to the Clinton period and pay our debt down and make ourselves less vulnerable to this global debt implosion cycle. But it's a very serious problem, not the normal business cycle, and that's why we're really not going to have any relief anytime soon. So I'm sorry to hit you with that news, but I don't think people really have a clear understanding of why we're in the problem we're in, and I wanted to give you at least my perspective on it. So other than that, enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you tonight during the debate. Thanks.